Okay. So are you okay with this cold weather?
Okay,
Yeah. So director of the Center of Educational Research Center should be here to welcome you, but he has another thing to take care of. So he asked me to give you a welcoming address. I'm an associate dean for the College of Education at Seoul National University, and on behalf of the whole family of College of Education, I welcome all of you. I was worried that how much you are used to this cold weather. If
they're very good.
you're very good.
They're
Oh,
very
good.
coping very well.
Yeah. So one thing that I was preparing for this remark is that I believe getting used to something unfamiliar is essence of learning a foreign language too. So maybe it's a good opportunity for you to realize how difficult to get used to something unfamiliar. And I believe you get some insights from this experience too. And I'm very honored to introduce Professor Jungmin Lee from the Department of English Language Education here at our office. So he has had a lot of experience of teaching English and teaching contents about learning a foreign language. And especially he's an expert in literacy in foreign language. So you will get a lot of insights from his talk. And I hope you enjoy the talk here and also everything that you have planned for your visit to Korea. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Can you just read all people?
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Philip. I'm the student leader from University of Malaya, and it's very nice to see all of you. So, 안녕하세요.
Student?
Yeah, student leader.
Very-
Student leader. Yes. Maybe because she's leaving, can we give her? Oh. Oh, really good. For your library.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Prof, come together, just like. The kids. Okay. Picture. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you. 감사합니다. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
네, 감사합니다. Thank you.
We'll do your stuff for you later.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Okay, welcome to Korea and Seoul National University. Personally, I'm very honored to have this great opportunity to see many faculty members and students from Malaysia. Actually, I have never been to Malaysia, regrettably, but I've been to Singapore a couple of times, but I didn't cross the border to visit. But when I studied in the US, I met several students from Malay, and also personally, I'm sort of more interested in kind of bilingual educational policy here in Korea. I'll introduce a little bit later, but at that time I studied Malaysian language policy because at the time we try to introduce English as a kind of official language. You might be a little bit surprised, but at the time we try to introduce English further into our society. So at the time, I explored some of the Malaysian language history. So I got some idea from that experience, and I introduced a little bit about the Malay situation, so that I'm a little bit familiar with the situation there. So today, I'm going to have about like 50 minutes or 45 minutes up to 11 o'clock. And my title is to roll. Here I say the evolution of English education here in Korea. And but with the limited time, I just briefly touch some of the major issues that you might need to know. So, historical background. Are you all familiar with the Korean Peninsula? This is the map of Korea, okay? But this is a very small peninsula, but still it is still divided by two countries. According to our national constitution, we say that this whole country is the Republic of Korea, which is South Korea. We never say we have two different countries, but internationally, many people believe that in the Korean Peninsula, there are two countries, North Korea and South Korea. According to our national constitution, these are all Korea, one single country. But the real situation is divided according to this line. So that this is North Korea and South Korea. Okay. And linguistically, as I show here, that you know how to read this? Goryeo dynasty. Okay, Goryeo dynasty. Many people internationally we call Korea. Okay? The word of Korea just comes from this because at the time the ceramic china and Korean ginseng, do you know ginseng? Ginseng was so well known across the world. It's wisdom. So there are many people call Goryeo, and then become Korean. So this dynasty goes almost like 400 years, and then later Joseon dynasty is about 1910. So that around these almost one centennial, almost 1,000 years, Korea was unified, and then under one single dynasty, we always use the one single language, which is Korean. Okay. So for the last almost 1,000 years in the Korean Peninsula, almost all people used only one single language, which is Korean. Okay. So we don't have any bilingual experiences. That's the very critical, important kind of experience that Koreans have. Okay. With respect to the language. So that's the critical point that we might be aware of. And then geographically, Korea is right here. Okay. Then this is one. Okay, we call Sea of Eastern Sea. By the way, Sea of Japan. We don't like the listening about here. Japan is right here. Yes, China is right here, and then here is Russia. Okay, and then of course the Pacific Ocean. There's the United States. So geographically, okay, you see Korea, the location of Korea is surrounded by the many superpowers. China, Japan, Russia, and the United States. Okay. But Malaysia is right here. Okay. So the surrounding countries, maybe India is a little bit bigger, but almost identical. So geographically, Korea is a little. You should be also aware of that kind of, so that, when we look at the Europe, Poland, the nation of Poland is surrounded by Germany, Russia, and France. So that their historical experience quite similar to ours, because we are surrounded by many superpowers history. And another interesting aspect in terms of English language here is Korea. This part is also like the British empires, the 19th and the 20th century. So see here, okay, British,
Yeah.
but here, start. Okay, they start in Hong Kong,
Yes.
then no further expansion to the Far Eastern area. Okay, then who control the Far Eastern area with all the 20th century? In this way. Japan. Okay. So that's why actually English expansion in terms of this area that almost stopped here. So in Korea, we have never been any kind of English influence throughout the history. But maybe your country is a little different.
Yeah.
But in Korea, we are influenced by Japan. Because British expansion stopped at Hong Kong and a little bit of China, Shanghai or some area, but they didn't go further to the Korean Peninsula or China. So slightly different history in Korea in terms of English language. And here, like spoken or written Korean language system. We speak Korean as a language, but the written language system, we have two systems. One is Korean alphabet. This one is was invented in the 13, almost 14th century. By the King Sejong at the time. King Sejong invented this writing system. So throughout our human history, okay, one single person invented the writing system is a very unique history. No other countries have such kind of history that one person created a written system. But Korean alphabet is created by the king. In around 1350 or something like that. It's the 14th century. He invented this writing system. And this is a Chinese characters. We adopted these Chinese characters almost like 1500 or 1600. Throughout the history, we used also this writing system. And so that maybe this is a little bit blurred about actually. This is the one books that we used in the Joseon Dynasty, but all the characters are Chinese characters at the time. Exclusively, we must use Chinese characters rather than these Korean characters. So Chinese characters is very hard to learn, but the Korean characters like the alphabetic system, so they're very easy to learn. Okay? So that's the difference. And in the 1960s, okay, this is a Korean newspaper, and then this is a 2026 newspaper. Can you see the differences? Okay. You see a lot of Chinese characters here, but nowadays only one single one over here. Okay. This is the last name of Lee. My last name is Lee. This Lee refers to the president. Okay. So if in this newspaper we see Korean character Lee, then maybe generally people don't recognize this Lee refers to the president. So that Chinese character was first, but the rest of the thing is all Korean alphabet. So there's still almost 60 years. Okay, time span, we use more and more Korean characters, so that the younger generation not know any Chinese characters. But I know a lot of Chinese. I can read all this papers. That's the current situation. So briefly, from 1910 to 1945, we are at the time we are under Japanese occupation, almost 45 years. So, so at the time, Japanese language is a official language. So all Koreans should know Japanese, and they have to use Japanese language in their daily life. Officially, newspaper, school education, and then government administration, all things were conducted in Japanese. But maybe they couldn't control the daily conversation between Koreans. But officially, they forced us to use Japanese language for but at that time, English was a kind of window to the world, the liberal world, to many Koreans. Okay? Because there were many missionary schools in Korea, there are a lot of missionary people coming from US or UK, so that they spread out Christianity to the Korean people, and then they see that the US is a kind of ideal country that we have to imitate at the time, and also US might help us to liberate from the Japanese occupation, so that many people will pay attention to the English. Even though actually Japanese language was official language, and all the Koreans at school, they have to learn Japanese language. So, as I said, throughout the 1,000 years of Korean history, in the Korean Peninsula, we always use one single language, but that's the exception. During the 35 years of Japanese occupation, Korean society was bilingual. They have to use Korean, and also they use Japanese language. That's a very unique experience to me. So there are, the generations of maybe 80s or 90s, they know a little bit Japanese. But many of them, they forgot some of those Japanese, but still they slightly understand some of Japanese expression. We also use some of the Japanese words too. And then after liberation, 1945, and then throughout the 1986. 86 is a kind of turning point in Korean society, because at that time, we first held Asian Games. Okay. Malaysia, when I was very young, actually, I saw a lot of Asian Games held in Kuala Lumpur. I heard several times. I saw many articles in the newspaper, and so Malaysia they held several Asian Games. But in the 1986, there was the first time in Korea we held international sports games. Okay? And then 1988, then we held first Olympic Games. So at that time, a lot of sportsmen from overseas. Okay? So in Seoul, we saw a lot of foreigners like you. Okay, when we worked on the street, we saw a lot of foreigners from across the world. So we have to have some communication with those peoples. What language they should we use at the time? English language. But even though they learn English language at schools, but nobody could communicate fluently at the time. So that all of a sudden people were shocked and aware of their level of English language proficiency. So what happened? What happened? I'll talk to later on. So in this period especially, English language was not a daily life language. Okay? It's only existed in the classroom. Okay? And then most English teachers at the time at school were educated under Japanese style. You know how poor their English pronunciation, especially Japanese people, right? So, and then Japanese style of English language education is grammar translation. That they always focus on reading skills and then translation because that was their official policy. Because why Japanese people at the time should learn English because they need to get access to Western reading materials. Okay? So translation was the primary focus of that time. So that style of English education continued to be in Korean classroom because most of the teachers were educated under Japanese style of English language education. Yeah. And then 1986 to 1997. 1997 is also another very critical moment in Korean history. So because of the Asian Games and Olympic Games, we opened our society to the world, and we have some more kind of interaction with the foreigners. So that many people believe that our English language education system has some problem, and then we need to develop students' communication skills. And so since then, our national curriculum has always one single sentence statement. The primary goal of English language education is communicative ability. That's the kind of statement we proclaimed in the national curriculum since the and then after 1997 is very important in Korean history because at that time, 1997, we experienced like IMF crisis, financial crisis. So all the big companies collapsed, and then many people are laid out because they lost jobs, and also the dollar to Korean conversion ratio went up almost double or 3 times. So our national economy was almost collapsed. So at that time, many people believed that why we failed such economy because we were not globalized now with economic system. And why we were not globalized? Because we are very poor speaking English. That was the one reason many people believe. So that we push, okay, we push English language education and communication skills to all the people. Primarily focusing on the students, but average and ordinary Korean people, they have to use English so that we have to globalize our society. That's the primary period. This globalization in Korean language we say 세계화. 세계화. 세계 means world. 화 is Asia. 세계화 is the globalization. Because at that time we believe that English is just for survival. Not just enjoy, but we have to survive, then we have to learn English language. That's it. For that elementary level English language education was mandatory from 3rd grade of the elementary school. They learn English language 2 or 3 times a week. System. Then we also introduce a peak program. And for that, native speakers from the overseas and then put it to English language classroom from elementary to high school. That program is epic for the native speakers. And also we established English villages. So we have a lot of English villages around the country. When it was peak time, we had almost 50 English villages. So set up almost like exactly English towns. Then when you go there and you can see people, buildings, and then that area you have to use English only. Yeah, that's English village. Okay. Even Newsweek or other, foreign news media introduced the English speaking village. It's a very interesting kind of event. And also English immersion program. This sort of similar to Malaysia situation.
Yeah.
Okay. So we try to introduce English immersion program, focusing on like sports education, math, science. So highly debated at the time, it was around 2010 or that area, we tried to introduce English immersion programs. And then we teaching English through English, because in almost all English classes, no English teachers actually teach classes in English. They do always use Korean language to teach English, so that the government requires all the teachers should use English language in the classroom production. And also NEET, the National English Ability Test. They also develop this test. In this case, the test include 4 different language skills: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. They all try. But how about the current situation? All these things has done. Not working anything. But at the time, we tried to develop these things, and also sending teachers to overseas training. I was also at the time, I was a director of this teacher training center at Seoul National University. So we send almost 50 or 60 English teachers every semester to the US or Canada to train them as an English teacher. They also have an opportunity to experience the real English class, the US or Canada. So that's the things for us. Do you know how much money we spend at the time annually to improve English language education? You can imagine that. Also, we set up very specialized high and middle schools at the time. So we call foreign language high schools or global high or middle school. Still, we have some foreign language high schools and then global high schools and middle schools country. But at the time, we were so popular, so competitive, because that's the threat that through these high schools or middle schools, they can go to their prestigious universities like Seoul National. So all students and parents were primarily very interested in entering these high schools. English camp and villages as well. Haju English village is one of the most well-known English villages. They spend almost 600 billion or $1 billion at the time to build up the Haju English village. And that's the kind of official policies and programs that Korean government or local high schools introduce. But privately, personally, all Koreans also eager to pursue their children's English language education. So only overseas education. Many parents send their kids to English-speaking countries when their children were like in elementary school students or middle school or high school. They send their children to overseas. So we call in that case Swan Father. If you are interested in this term, this is academically officially kind of language that many researchers also use this term. Swan Father. Or in Korean, Hirogi Abba. Abba means father. Hirogi is a swan. Why they call swan father Hirogi Abba? Because there is. Usually fathers stay in Korea because they have to make money to support their family. So mothers and children stay in the US or Canada, and then the fathers usually stay in Korea and make money and send their all the financial support to their families. And then these fathers only visited their family once a year or twice a year, or never visited their families for almost 2 years sometimes. Because if they don't have any money to travel to US, then they have to stay here. So that's the kind of very critical social phenomenon. So usually this is a well-known in action. Also, we see a lot of English testing panic because to enter the high schools, okay, foreign language high schools or global high schools, it was so complicated. So they have to have some standard English testing scores like TOEIC, TOEFL, or TAPS. So many high school students or middle school, elementary level students were prepared to take these kind of tests. Maybe annually, one student maybe took almost 10 times to get higher scores of this test. And also private education board. So that this is also Korean language, but internationally well-known term, Hagwon. Private academies, we call it Hagwon, as a Korean language. This is also very well and throughout the country, private education is changing. And also English kindergarten, we call it 영어유치원, English kindergarten. In this kindergarten, actually every language is use English language to teach English to young children. Because they believe that for critical kind of period, children are exposed to English language, then they could become like native speakers. So many parents send their kids to English kindergarten, and they usually spend 1.5 million Korean won. How much US dollars? Maybe this one was almost 1,000. Okay, more than 1,000 US dollars a month. Not many people send their kids to English kindergarten, only few people. So that period, almost like we're spending from 1997 to 2014, almost 20 years. At the time, I was a professor at English language education department. So can you believe my role at the time? I was almost involved in many of these national policies and education policies at the time. So key characteristics, national goal, enhancing global competitiveness of Korean society and people so that English fluency is necessary. And social cost, maybe high private education expenses. So it has become a national kind of issue because we spend too much time, money on English language education. So some people, some government policy push toward like globalizing and enhancing our English language ability. Some other part of the social sectors are very concerned because of this kind of high spending and then also gap between the high percent students and low percent students. And also English also from grammar only or grammar translation method to more communicative competence within the classroom. That was the period at the time. So 2000 actually were a wild time for Korea because English wasn't just a subject, but it was almost a reason for upward mobility for many people. So that they send their kids to English speaking countries and they spend a lot of money on private education. So at the time, if I ask many students, where did you learn your English ability? And many students answer that I learned at Taiwan, not school. Because at school they spend almost 2 or 3 times a week for learning English, but outside of school they spend almost 5 or 10 hours on English language learning. That's why many young children believe if they learn their English ability from Taiwan, not school. But okay, the pendulum, I said, pendulum is go this way and this way. Okay, so that period is a kind of extreme case for Korean society. And then kind of reverse forward, okay, all the way the other side. That's the current situation. From 2014 to the current time, it's a reverse forward. So Korean society has also changed a lot during the past almost 10 years. Okay? So digital is also one factor, and then K-wave, you are also familiar with Hallyu or K-pop or K-drama, something like that. Okay, and then because of this kind of shift in the culture, society, and also one interesting thing is that I'm personally more interested in this TV program in terms of English language education or perception of our English language in Korean society. This program is we call 비정상회담, non-summit meeting. The official name of this program is 비정상회담, non-summit meeting. Okay? In this program, these posts are all Korean, but the rest of the people are foreigners who live in Korea. Okay? But before this program, whenever foreigners appear in the TV program, they always use English language. They never used Korean at all. The TV programs. Okay, but since then, because of this program, not only these Koreans, but these all foreigners use very fluent Korean language. So how did Koreans see this program? Well, the foreigners are speaking Korean very fluently. Okay? So why don't we use Korean whenever we see and having interaction with foreigners in Korean, rather than speaking English? That's the kind of perceptual change. I think that this program has influenced in terms of how Koreans actually see their foreigners and how they conceptualize English language. And also, even though they are very fluent in Korean language, but their pronunciation or grammar sometimes is not perfect. So many people see that, before this kind of program, many Koreans believe that whenever we speak English, we have to be very fluent and grammatically perfect. But since then, at least we can communicate with people. Grammar is not critical, okay? Fluency is not very critical. Pronunciation is not everything. Okay, so since then, we see a lot of programs that appear many foreigners or sometimes many Koreans go to overseas or traveling programs or kind of cultural programs. Then they speak at least some little bit of English language, even though they are not perfect. Okay, so many Korean people see that, okay, that's okay. At least I can speak such a level of English to have some meaningful communication. Why not? So some things. Yeah, this program is very critical in terms of. And also, before this period, we always believed that American English is the only English. Even the, UK English is not English, or Australia or other type of English is not really good English. But nowadays, many people have different perception. Okay? And also, a culture effect. Okay? And also currently, Korean society has also been more globalized and multiculturalized. And we see a lot of foreigners on the street. Even I think that according to some statistics, currently we have more than 2 million foreigners living in Korea. So in some aspect, we also become more sort of global society. We see a lot of foreigners on the streets. So we throughout the briefly 100 years of the Korean history, in terms of English language and bilingual language policy, we have changed a lot. Okay? So especially this period, we have another level of experience. So more open to the world, and also some people say that like localization rather than globalization. So we seek some kind of global kind of openness to our other foreign countries, but also we sort of more focus on localizing our society so that English language is still very important for language. Maybe it's number one foreign language as opposed to like German, Japanese, or Chinese language. Still many people believe that English is the primary language that you have to learn, but still. And also one interesting aspect in terms of English language education at school, still testing is very critical to enter the top universities. Here I didn't show any testing samples, but currently, even though as I said before, like a NEET, which is a national English language test that developed almost like 10 years ago, focusing on reading, writing, speaking, and listening, but that testing has failed because of some technical problems. So still we use our old style of English language test, focusing exclusively on listening and reading skills. Okay. So I'm personally more interested in doing research on Korean English reading test. It's my specialty in the area of reading. And I believe that the reading test, our college entrance reading test, is the most difficult test in the world. Even though actually I think they were very good at English language, but if you see the test, you almost fail. Because the exam for high school graduate, okay, to enter the college, the testing is so difficult. Even I can't solve the problem. So this year, actually, there were one reading test. Is about the philosopher Kant. Do you know Kant? Immanuel Kant. His theory of philosophy just came out in the English reading test, and then almost 90% of the students failed to answer the question. So the director of the testing center resigned because of the test. So, this is almost time that I briefly, actually, it's not everything, okay, but I just briefly talk about English language education for the last almost 100 years. So if you have any question, I'm just writing.
Morning, Prof. My name is